They called it a minor incident, a procedural correction, nothing more, a necessary disciplinary measure to reinforce imperial stability. But for humanity, it was a moment everything changed. The Galactic Empire had always maintained a careful distance from the newly integrated species known as humans. They were tolerated, not welcomed, allowed into the council chambers, but never truly heard. In time, they began to rise in influence, first with trade, then science, then philosophy. And that was where the problem began. 30 human women, chosen for their brilliance and virtue, had been invited to the Zalari capital under the pretense of cultural diplomacy. They represented the best of Earth. Scientists, historians, peace envoys, poets, even a single mother who led a planetary water reclamation program. Each had earned their place through relentless effort, not by privilege. And that made them dangerous. The Emperor, Vaktar the Eternal, declared them subversives, accused them of ideological contamination. No trial, no witnesses, just a broadcast. 30 executions, one by one, streamed in high definition to every corner of the galaxy. Their final words were not of fear, but defiance. One recited lines from an Earth poem. I am the wrath of the quiet, the storm of the forgotten. Another simply looked into the camera and whispered, remember us. The galaxy watched in silence. No planet protested. No allied race lifted a voice. The message was clear. Humanity had overstepped, and now it would bleed. On Earth, the broadcast began as outrage. In the first hour, 100 million mourned. By the third, the mourning ended. Across every continent, humans rose as one. Politicians stepped down. Generals stepped forward. Flags were lowered, only to be burned. The United Nations dissolved itself. What replaced it had no name, only a singular directive: retaliation. There were no debates, no elections, just engineers converting satellites into weapons platforms, AI cores awakening from legal hibernation, and sleeper fleets igniting in orbit. The Terran Accord was born not in ceremony, but in fire and steel. Vaktar underestimated them. The entire galaxy did. They thought of humans as emotionally unstable, irrational, too fragmented to endure conflict at scale. But vengeance has a clarity no doctrine can match. It doesn't debate ethics. It doesn't wait for approval. Within 2 days, humanity withdrew from every diplomatic outpost. Every colony received a single order: evacuate or prepare for total war. On Mars, children were taught to identify weaknesses in alien ship architecture. On Europa, cloning facilities doubled production to breed cybernetic combat medics. Earth's moon was converted into a weapons forge. By day 5, Project Thanatos was reactivated, a theoretical last resort protocol, buried since the early days of interstellar exploration. It wasn't a weapon. It was a philosophy, ruthlessness engineered into algorithms, morality filtered to the lens of extinction-level retaliation. The first strike came on day 7. A Zalari fuel relay in neutral space ceased transmission. Imperial investigators found only silence, then debris, still glowing, suspended in an artificial gravity field that looped the Emperor's execution orders on repeat. Day 9. The Terran fleet appeared near Sector Vetra. 3 ships only, smaller than standard frigates. They announced no terms. They launched no warnings. The planetary defense grid fell in 16 seconds. Not destroyed, repurposed. Every orbital cannon now protected human medevac ships as they landed. The planet's native race surrendered not out of fear, but awe. No civilians were harmed. Every hospital received Terran medical crates containing full cures for known local diseases. The message was clear: we are not your enemy, unless you choose to stand with them. Vaktar dismissed the reports, called them digital fabrications. Even as his commanders relayed the destruction of a 2nd and 3rd armory, he refused to believe humans could move so fast. When Earth was admitted into the Council, they had no fleet capable of large-scale operations. What he didn't understand was that humans had never stopped building. They had simply hidden the blueprints behind layers of civilian infrastructure. Every trade vessel could be converted into a missile barge. Every mining colony had fallback codes for militarization. In a week, the Terran Accord became the most advanced war engine in known space, and the galaxy began to fear. Psychological operations began shortly after the second wave, not through propaganda, but memory. Earth began uploading the personal records of each executed woman, holographic recreations of their work, voices, lives. Anyone with a public access terminal could see them, their final moments, their dreams, their love for peace. The contrast was devastating. Other species began to question why the executions happened at all, why 30 beacons of diplomacy and compassion were silenced while the Council looked away. The Empire responded with censors, firewalls, and military countermeasures. But they were too late. The Terran Accord didn't need to convince the galaxy. It only needed to remind it what had been lost. Empathy became a weapon sharper than any plasma blade. Vaktar authorized a full blockade around Earth. 15 fleets, 200 ships. They surrounded the Terran system in perfect formation. Their commanders transmitted ultimatums, surrender, reparations, disarmament. Earth responded with a live feed from the Mars relay station. No voices, no faces, just the names of the 30 women, etched in golden alloy on a black obsidian wall. The camera zoomed out, revealing Earth's fleet behind it, silent, unmoving, massive. Then the feed cut. 14 seconds later, every Imperial ship within Earth's orbit suffered instantaneous core overload. Not explosions, internal containment inversion. They folded in on themselves, collapsing like stars. No one saw what weapon was used. Only the aftermath, empty space, and a growing fear. The Accord began distributing quantum-tagged warnings to every government. Stand down or stand in our way. Most did the former. Some tried the latter. None survived the encounter. Meanwhile, Earth didn't gloat. It didn't celebrate victories. Every Terran soldier wore a simple patch, 30 stars, arranged in a spiral. A reminder that this war was not conquest. It was retribution. Entire species came forward with apologies. Some offered assistance. The Accord accepted every genuine effort, gave them medicine, technology, and security in return. It wasn't mercy. It was strategy. Terrans didn't just break their enemies. They inspired their neighbors. The Council remained silent. Vaktar's messages became more erratic. He called humans corrupted by emotion, claimed their vengeance was proof of their unfitness to belong in galactic order. But the galaxy was no longer listening. Systems began seceding from the Empire. Former allies closed their ports to Imperial traffic. Former vassals pledged allegiance to no one, but they shared Earth's warnings verbatim. The Emperor ordered the deployment of Project Null, a weaponized gravity, that could erase planetary magnetic fields. But the first attempt failed when the weapon was hacked mid-activation. Its components rewired themselves to self-destruct. The engineers found a message encoded in the wreckage. You took 30, we'll leave you none. When the first Imperial capital ship defected to the Terran Accord, it did so without a single shot fired. The crew transmitted a message on all frequencies. We watched them die. We will not serve those who applauded. That vessel, the Dalecar, became the blueprint for the next phase of the war, conversion, not destruction. Earth had never expected surrender, but they had planned for it. Every defection was met not with suspicion, but with data packages containing cultural archives, medical tech, agricultural nanites, and translated Terran literature. The message was always the same. This is what you tried to erase. Now decide if you'll help preserve it. The first wave of human counterstrikes had been brutal, precise, and terrifying. The second was psychological. Now came the third, transformative. In less than 60 days, over 170 worlds formerly under Imperial control had ceased all contact with Vaktar, not because they fear humans, but because they want to survive beside them. Earth released what they called the Thanatos Directives, machine learning protocols designed to strategize war without emotional corruption. It wasn't AI waging war. It was humanity's raw vengeance shaped into adaptive, evolving algorithms. These constructs didn't operate by known military doctrine. They wrote new rules, then rewrote them again before the enemy could understand the first version. Entire flotillas vanished, consumed by temporal displacement mines humans denied existed. Communications arrays received pre-recorded defeat scenarios, narrated in the voices of the executed 30. Every message ended with the same phrase, "This could have been peace." Human forces didn't build forward bases. They infected enemy systems. A single scout ship could deploy millions of nanofracture swarms that disassembled orbital platforms molecule by molecule. In their place, they left nothing, no beacon, no threat, just silence. The Empire tried to respond with biological weapons. Earth responded by turning their own viruses back on them, modified to emit neurofeedback pulses that triggered empathy seizures. Soldiers collapsed under the weight of their own guilt. In one incident, an entire division of elite shock troops abandoned their armor, laid down their weapons, and began planting trees on a devastated colony. No one had told them to. They simply remembered. Earth didn't send generals. It sent architects of systemic collapse, economists who turned resource hubs into unsustainable liabilities, cyber warfare teams that rerouted supply chains through black holes, psychologists who weaponized cultural myths, using them to trigger species-specific mass disobedience. Nothing was off limits. Nothing was sacred. The executions had removed every boundary. The Terran Accord began deploying constructs known as mind breakers, digital avatars constructed from the neurological imprints of the 30. Not copies, not simulations. Echoes, each one embedded into every conflict zone. They spoke with the same voices. They asked the same questions. Why did you say nothing? Did you cheer or did you stay silent? What would you want someone to do if it were your daughters? Every soldier who encountered one faced a choice: defect or be marked. Those who resisted found their ships frozen in time dilation fields, their weapon systems looped into endless self-tests. In one battle, an entire fleet believed they were fighting for 18 hours until they realized the war had already ended and they'd been standing still in manipulated chronobubbles. Their systems rebooted to broadcast a final image, the execution chamber, played in reverse. As the Empire fractured, the Council finally emerged from hiding. They convened in secret, broadcasting pleas for ceasefire, for diplomacy. Earth responded once. You watched, you consented, you forfeited peace. The Council disbanded 2 hours later. Allied species once loyal to the Empire began reaching out under flags of neutrality. Earth accepted every message, but neutrality required proof. Those who harbored war criminals were targeted without warning. Within seconds of confirmed noncompliance, Terran missiles bypassed shields, entered planetary cores, and detonated with surgical containment, destroying only the guilty sectors. The rest of the planet was left untouched, but forever marked. One alien observer wrote, "The humans do not strike with rage. They strike with memory." Entire species rewrote their histories to remove support for Vaktar. Education systems replaced imperial doctrine with human philosophy. In less than 3 months, Terran ethics became the galactic standard, not by law, but by fear. And still, Earth did not claim dominion. Every liberated world was left to govern itself. But those who aligned with the Accord received protection, resources, and cultural access never before granted. On Earth, there were no celebrations, no parades. Every victory was measured in silence. The families of the 30 didn't speak to reporters. They continued their work, in labs, in schools, in orphanages. One mother opened a hospital named after her daughter. Another founded a language translation project that helped 20 species communicate for the first time. Vengeance had not dulled them. It had sharpened their purpose. Terran battle units began rotating home, replaced by automated sentinels running human-coded peacekeeping protocols. These machines didn't threaten. They simply observed. Any sign of systemic abuse, oppression, or forced assimilation triggered immediate de-escalation protocols. Not with violence, but exposure. Terran satellites would live-stream abuses, name perpetrators, freeze accounts, disable weapons. Every citizen became a witness. Every crime became a collapse. The Empire tried once more. A last strike, codenamed Exodus. They launched a fleet of 70 dreadnoughts toward Earth's sun, planning to detonate it using captured singularity cores. Earth allowed them to arrive, did not intercept. The fleet entered solar orbit, initiated core deployment, and nothing happened. Their ships had been compromised before they ever launched. The dreadnoughts erupted, not in explosions, but in song. Across the system, each ship broadcast the same audio. The voices of the 30, singing an ancient Earth lullaby in a dozen human languages. The solar winds carried the sound for hours. No Terran ship fired. No retaliation came. The dreadnought crews evacuated themselves and surrendered without terms. The last commander of that fleet was interviewed before his exile. When asked why they gave up, he simply said, "We forgot that humans are not just warriors. They're reminders." Earth announced no end to the war. It didn't have to. The galaxy declared it for them. Vaktar's empire no longer existed. His name became unspoken. His likeness removed from all monuments. Statues were replaced with 30 stelae, each bearing the name of one of the executed, etched in Terran script. The Terran Accord rejected all offers to establish a new central government. Their only demand was permanent access to every world's truth archives, raw, unedited records of their involvement during the executions. Most complied. Those who didn't were isolated, not with force, but silence. Trade ceased. Communications dropped. No threats were made. No soldiers were sent. And in time, silence became unbearable. The last of the Empire's core systems fell without resistance, not because Earth demanded submission, but because no one remained willing to fight. The few who held out did so out of pride, not conviction, and pride proved brittle under the weight of planetary silence. By then, the Terran Accord operated more like a principle than a government. Its fleets moved only when necessary. Its weapons activated only in response to injustice. It didn't administer worlds. It reminded them. The Empire's high command fractured. Vaktar's ministers were found dead, not by Earth's hand, but their own, a silent confession that they understood what had come for them was not war, but judgment. Of Vaktar himself, there were whispers, tracked frequencies, intercepted transmissions, but no one knew exactly where he had gone. The Terran Accord did not chase him. They didn't need to. Their eyes turned to what remained. The wreckage of a system built on obedience, now crumbling under the weight of accountability. Across the galaxy, species that once stood at the Empire's side begged for absolution, but Earth had no interest in shame. It demanded reflection. Those who stepped forward were not interrogated. They were asked to remember. Each was given unrestricted access to the Terran archives, including the full, unedited footage of the executions. Most had never seen them in full. Some collapsed. Others wept. One counselor took her own life hours after viewing. Reconstruction began not with blueprints, but memory. The Council of Memory was formed, an interspecies tribunal unlike any before it. Its charter held no room for titles, only questions. Every representative began with one responsibility: declare what you allowed. Entire races publish apologies to humanity, not as press statements, but as public education reforms. Generations learned not who won the war, but why it began. Earth didn't punish the innocent. It taught them. The lessons were brutal, honest, unrelenting. No myths, no sanitization. The images of the 30 played in classrooms, their voices broadcast over planetary ceremonies, their names engraved on currency, literature, and starship hulls. For the first time in galactic history, war was not glorified. It was understood. The final act of the Terran Accord was to find the Emperor. They located him not in a fortress, but a forgotten mining colony on the edge of uncharted space. Alone, unarmed, without followers. A shadow of what he once was. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He only asked if Earth would kill him. The Accord refused. Death would be too easy. He was not a target anymore. He was a lesson. They exiled him to a dead moon, orbiting a radiation-blasted gas giant. No visitors. No communications. No escape. His only companion was a viewing platform that played the names of the 30 on an endless loop, not as torment, but as truth. He would be forgotten by time, but remembered by consequence. Across 10,000 systems, former imperial colonies were invited into a new framework. No empire, no central power, just cooperative sovereignty, anchored by 3 unbreakable statutes: autonomy, transparency, and memory. Enforcement was not done by warships, but information. Every government had a direct link to the memory net, a distributed, immutable archive maintained by Earth and its allies. Any violation, any abuse, would trigger automated exposure, followed by diplomatic collapse. In this system, power came not from weapons, but from trust, and trust could not be bought. The Terran military downsized voluntarily. Half the fleet was decommissioned and converted into interstellar emergency responders. The rest patrolled the outer edges, not as enforcers, but as witnesses. Their weapons remained silent. Their presence alone was deterrence enough. The children of the 30 became the de facto leaders of Earth's galactic interaction, not by appointment, but by merit. Each had built something lasting from loss. One became a cultural ambassador, fluent in over 60 alien languages. Another founded an interspecies rehabilitation center for former soldiers. They did not speak of vengeance. They spoke of vigilance. Some species resisted the new order, not with war, but with hesitation. Earth made no threats. It only waited. Over time, resistance turned into dialogue, then cooperation. The Accord's insistency, its refusal to exploit or dominate, became its greatest weapon. Nothing was demanded. Everything was offered. And so the galaxy chose peace, not from fear, but from conviction. Memorials to the 30 were constructed on every major world. Some stood as statues, others as data monoliths. All were connected through a shared signal, a heartbeat synced to the original pulse of Earth's morning broadcast, a quiet thrum across the stars, reminding every civilization of what silence once cost. On Earth, no monuments were raised. No one needed them. The memory was in the soil, the air, the rebuilt cities. Their names were not just remembered. They were lived. Every breakthrough, every act of unity, every step forward carried the weight of what had been taken. In time, stories emerged, not of the war, but of the world after. Alien children sang lullabies written by the poets of the 30. Human art became sacred in cultures that once viewed them as primitives. Earth's history was studied not as a timeline, but as a warning. The Terran Accord officially dissolved 50 years after the executions, not out of necessity, but completion. Its goals had been met, its presence no longer required. In its place stood a network of sovereign species, each responsible for its own memory, each with a voice, each with the tools to prevent what had once happened to Earth. But Earth never fully returned to peace. It didn't need to. It became something else, not a power, not a martyr, but a presence, a living reminder that silence breeds monsters and memory destroys them. In the quiet that followed, when the stars no longer shook with war and the names of the 30 echoed not in pain, but in principle, the galaxy finally understood what Earth had done. It had not avenged its dead. It had justified their lives.